Again, dear viewers, you're watching Eri-TV. Welcome to this special edition of SAT Guests. We have two panelists abroad, Dr. Gideon Abay Asmorom. He is a professor of mathematics at the Commonwealth University from Richmond, Virginia. And Ms. Sophia Tesfamariam, she is the director of U.S. Foundation for the Horn of Africa from Washington. Welcome to our program.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, all right. So our discussion for this evening, it's going to address the issue of the so-called Commission of Inquiry and its report. So let me start with you, Sophie. What is the Commission of Inquiry and how was it established? Who are its members and what is their relationship? Ms. Sophia, this is directed to you.
Okay. As you know, the Commission of Inquiry came after the Special Rapporteur. The Special Rapporteur had been there for a year, and in June 2014, at the Human Rights Council's 26th session, the Special Rapporteur's mandate would have been ending, so they decided to renew her mandate and at the same time also add two additional persons to make up the Commission of Inquiry. And it was with that resolution that they adopted and brought in the two commissioners with Sheila Keith-Ruth staying on as one of the three commissioners of inquiry. And the mandate was according to the resolution, the mandate says the Commission is supposed to investigate the charges and allegations in the Rapporteur's report. But judging from the report that was just produced last week, it looks like the Commission unilaterally expanded its mandate to not just cover what Sheila covered in her mandate, but to expand it and give themselves a mandate that covers the entire post-independence Eritrea instead of just the allegations that were covered under her mandate in the first year.
What is the Commission's mandate, however? And did it stick to the scope of its mandate or did it exceed its initial mandate?
Well, judging from the report, it looks like the Commission actually went beyond its mandate and gave itself an extra mandate that it didn't have, and that was to investigate allegations stemming from the very beginning of Eritrea's independence, which was not something that was covered in the resolution, and it's not the mandate of the rapporteur either. And instead of doing an investigation or an inquiry, it seems at least from the methodology that was used and the conclusions that were delivered, it would seem that the Commission was on a fishing expedition to develop evidence to fit its predetermined conclusion. It didn't look like it was an investigation that led to a conclusion, but rather the opposite. It was targeting individuals and personalities that would corroborate stories that would fit its narrative of what was in Sheila Keith-Ruth's report to begin with. So no, it did not do what the Commission asked to do or what the resolution asked it to do, and it did not deliver what it was supposed to deliver. So I would say no, it didn't. It didn't fit what it was supposed to do, and didn't abide by the principles and the standards and the methodologies that are given for human rights inquiries. So my answer would be no, it did not do what it was supposed to do.
Okay, but have any of the members of the Commission worked on issues relating to Eritrea before their appointment to the Commission of Inquiry?
Well, initially with the rapporteur, the Special Rapporteur, Keith-Ruth, we had established that she was already engaged with issues relating to Eritrea. And the Commission specifically says if you have worked on an issue and there was a conflict of interest per se, then you're supposed to bring it up in your application. And I looked at her application, and there's no mention of any of her work that she's done on Eritrea. But she did work for Amnesty International, and she did work with individuals and personalities who also produced some of the documents that she's presenting today, and had worked with them in the past in securing cases at the African Human Rights Commission against the state of Eritrea. So she did have prior engagement with these individuals and groups that are presented in her report today, in the Commission's report, and none of that was disclosed in her application as far as I could tell.
Okay, understandably, the special rapporteur was associated with Amnesty International. When was she there, and what was her position?
Well, she was working in the East Africa desk. She was associated with East Africa report, which would mean Eritrea would also be under her purview. But that was not the only problem with the Commission. It wasn't just the rapporteur, but including the two gentlemen that joined the Commission were also part of the African Commission, which had filed cases against Eritrea in the past. So Mike Smith and Victor Dankwa, both of them also had prior history with Eritrea and were also knowledgeable of, or even participants in prior cases against Eritrea. So there was no impartial commission that was established, and certainly not independent, since it was very much influenced by its past and also by the groups and individuals that maintained their relationship with them after they were brought on board to be part of the Commission of Inquiry.
Ms. Sophia, still, did the Special Rapporteur disclose during her application for the job that she had prior dealings with groups that were against the government of Eritrea?
No, she never disclosed that. It was never disclosed in her application. And she continued to deny any association despite the facts and despite the documented facts. She did have prior relations with people that were engaged with activities. And also, in this particular Commission of Inquiry report, those referenced in the document itself, in the 500-plus document, majority of them, almost all of them, are people that have been associated with this individuals or contributed to the development of the document itself. If people took time to see and read the multiple volumes of reports that have been produced on Eritrea in the last 15 years, you could almost cut and paste them and put together the Commission's report, because that's exactly what they were. They were taken right out of statements, reports presented in Reporters Sans Frontières, Christian Solidarity, Amnesty International, and the personalities were engaged very closely in forums and discussions and conferences in the last 15 years, and the papers and reports that were developed out of these forums and conferences made up what we see today as the Commission Inquiry's report. So there was no independent investigation. There was no independent work done. I think they spent all their time, the whole year, just cutting and pasting from past reports on Eritrea to develop this very partisan paper that we see today.
Ms. Sophia, what about the other members of the Commission?
Ditto for them. Both the other ones, Mr. Mike Smith and Mr. Victor Dankwa, have prior relations with the rapporteur and also with the African Commission, whose association with the groups that are producers of this document, have a long history with them, and showed absolutely no qualms about associating with them post their appointment into the Commission of Inquiry either, which we have seen with their subsequent interviews and relationships and forums and conferences with these individuals that have had dealings with the African Commission in the past.
Okay, Dr. Gideon, now my question will be forwarded to you. Well, to our knowledge, we have seen the Commission never visited Eritrea. And did the Commission ever contact any Eritrean mission, embassy, and diaspora community to gather its information? Dr. Gideon.
Well, as far as the diaspora community goes, not to the extent that one expects from a neutral body that's interested in finding the truth and in establishing facts. It did issue a general statement in its website. Probably that could be claimed as an announcement to the diaspora community. So other than the posting on their website, there wasn't this effort done by the Commission to find unbiased sample of Eritreans in the diaspora who could attest the reality in Eritrea. So all of it was done under wraps. So the answer to it is no, to a satisfactory manner they didn't. The same thing with the special rapporteur in her 2-year mandate from October 2012 through 2014. She didn't actively seek the Eritrean diaspora, particularly those in Europe and the Americas.
Dr. Gideon, if the Commission didn't contact any Eritrean mission, embassy, and diaspora community, who did the Commission rely on for its information, and individuals and groups?
Well, that's at the heart of what this Commission's report makes it baseless and unwarranted report. In a normal situation, any inquirer is supposed to ascertain that he or she or as a group doesn't get a biased sample. But the Commission tells us in the report that its primary sources were people who have pending asylum cases or refugees in hostile territories like Ethiopia and Djibouti. And this kind of information, plus some people who have hostile intention against the government of Eritrea from day one, were the ones who were orchestrating and rounding up the interviews for them. So they tell us that we have faceless, nameless sources. We are not going to tell who told us the story. We are not going to tell where the stories happen. Of course, all of this is under the cover of protecting the individuals. But in any inquiry, if you don't present verifiable facts and transcripts, technically speaking, you could pad or pack your report with all sorts of lies, like what this report does. So its main sources are individuals. We are told 550 people who were refugees looking for asylum, and therein lies a conflict of interest for two reasons. Number one, if a person is applying for political asylum, he or she is not a fool to contradict what makes them get an easy asylum case. So they would not dare tell the truth. The second one is, if we are talking to people in Ethiopia or Djibouti, when Ethiopian officials are looking, they are basically forcing people to tell you what you want to hear rather than what they feel they should talk. The special rapporteur, particularly from our experiences, and as Sophie was mentioning, she was on a fishing expedition, meaning that they have already have in their mind what report to write. So they were going left and right to get this or that information twisted to their liking. And since, as I said, we have no evidence of the transcripts and where these allegations are done or who did them, you cannot really, who said them, cannot really verify it.
Okay. So what was the role of the international NGOs, such as the Christian Solidarity Worldwide, the Amnesty International, and others in developing the narrative in Eritrea? Ms. Sophia, this question is directed to you.
I would say they had a very big role to play in this Commission's final report. If we go back some 15 years ago, or even longer, to 2001, we see the entry of Amnesty International through the person of Trisha Hefner, who had come to Asmara to do a stint at Asmara University, and for some reason when she came back from Asmara, she was very much engaged in the anti-Eritrea campaign that has ensued since then. And she's written multiple reports, she's written multiple books on Eritrea, organized multiple forums for anti-Eritrea groups, conducted many seminars and speaking engagements around universities, obviously to tarnish Eritrea's image. And she, being the Amnesty International expert on Eritrea, she managed to give herself and those who are in her entourage access to a lot of forums. The Christian groups, the Christian Solidarity Worldwide, Open Doors, and other Christian rights organizations in the United States and Europe also gave these anti-Eritrea groups access and forum, including to the United Nations. They had consultative status, which Christian Solidarity does, and that's how these anti-Eritrea groups ended up coming to these forums and bringing their testimonies and their reports to these places. Christian Solidarity Worldwide, and the gentleman, his name is Matthew Jones, we ran into him several times when we were in Geneva during the human rights hearing last year. And he was almost boasting about his role and how he was instrumental in getting the narrative on Eritrea to where it is today, and associating Eritrea with everything that could give him the kind of notoriety that his organization needed over Eritrea. And they've been running the campaigns in Europe on behalf of Eritreans. They've never worked with the Eritrean diaspora. They seem to be stuck on a couple of individuals who are known to be anti-government and who have an axe to grind with the government of Eritrea. So yes, the international NGOs played a very big role, and amongst them is Christian Solidarity Worldwide and Amnesty International, who played the really leading role, actually, in creating the narrative on Eritrea. If we trace Amnesty International, it's not just in the work of Trisha Hefner, but we also found out that all the narratives and all the buzzwords that were created, including the one of today, were created by Amnesty International to fit the campaigns that they were running against Eritrea. And one of their employees, who's now working in the UN, Gillian Tipley, was also an Amnesty personality and working as an UNMI human rights coordinator in Asmara during the United Nations mission for Eritrea and Ethiopia. So Amnesty's tentacles and Amnesty's reach inside of Eritrea through these Christian fundamental groups, extremist groups, has been very deep, and the bulk of the Commission's report reflects what Amnesty has been putting in their reports in the last 15 years. And in addition to that, the campaign with the refugees and asylum seekers, it's amazing that all these people that are, all these individuals that are associated with these Christian groups and Amnesty International are also members of the International Commission for Eritrean Refugees, along with these anti-Eritrea elements also that make up part of the Commission. So they drive the Commission, they drive the refugees out of Eritrea, They work to sustain the drive to with refugees on the outside of Eritrea, and today we see them using these refugees that they've extracted out of Eritrea as being the main people behind the report and or corroboration for the reports that they're intending to write about Eritrea. So the abuse of refugees is very clear here. Not sure where the United Nations is on this, because these refugees are absolutely being used to advance a political agenda. They're tracing them from the moment they leave Eritrea. Nobody else seems to know except these groups when they leave Eritrea and when they're heading out to the various areas in the world, and being able to manipulate them to get the kind of stories that they want. So I think the UN, it behooves the UN to not just reject this report of the Commission, since it's obviously partisan and politically motivated, but also because it relies on these compromised refugees and asylum seekers who should not be abused in the manner that they are today.
Okay. But did any of the members of the Eritrean diaspora contact Special Rapporteur? Dr. Gideon?
Yes, they did. She was appointed as a special rapporteur in the fall of 2012. So immediately after her appointment, I would say hundreds of Eritrean communities and organizations in the diaspora wrote to her, telling her that they have a stake, they would like their voice to be heard, they have stories to tell, urging her to listen to them and to put everything she writes in context. We knew that it was a politically motivated appointment as far as her office was concerned. We knew that she had all the past experiences that Sophie detailed very well. Nevertheless, from the Scandinavian countries to Germany, Italy, Switzerland, the Netherlands, to the US, Canada, the Eritrean communities, different organizations, communities, and individuals wrote to her. So I will say hundreds of Eritrean communities, I'm talking about organizations and communities, have contacted her.
And what was her response?
None. Disappointingly, the majority of the people who contacted her didn't get a response. The few that got responses got what's called boilerplate responses, what you would call form letters, saying that I live in Mauritius, I will not be available in North America or Europe, I would not come to Geneva except to deliver my report, hence I am sorry I cannot contact you, what she said. The only exception was during her second year mandate, she had a meeting with our communities in Germany, but as our communities in Germany would attest, none of what she had with them, none of the information they conveyed to her made it to her report. For the U.S. Communities, we knew that she was coming to New York. We asked her that if we could have an audience with her to share our stories. She refused it. She didn't give any responses. The last minute, she was going to address a meeting of American lawyers. It was sort of unpublicized event, so to speak. Our communities in the vicinity knew about it, registered themselves, attended the meeting, tried to challenge her. She was dismissive. She left New York without meeting with us, and then from Mauritius, she said that she could talk to us via telephone conference. Even then, to our dismay and disappointment, the person was not willing to listen, but to talk. So when she said, let's talk, it means you sit down, listen to me, rather than for us to give her the story. And when she finished talking, she said that she has a Hindu festivities to attend to, and she left without hearing much of what the community have to say. So that's the story of the special rapporteur's contact with the Eritrean diaspora community that she suspected would tell her the other side of the narrative, a narrative that she was not willing to take into consideration.
Okay, Dr. Gideon, what known activities did she participate in before that presented her as an activist as opposed to a neutral rapporteur?
Well, the way she was entertaining those she called to tell her stories of human rights abuses in Eritrea, she treated them totally differently than the majority of the Eritrean communists in the diaspora. So she would give address, she would tape them, she would give them public forums, and then in her past relationships and other things is very, very hostile. And even the reports she had presented, two reports, one in 2013 and another one in 2014, clearly shows that I would dare to say that, as Sophie was saying, they were listed. University professor would call it plagiarism, basically without attributing from where the quotes were taken, was basically cut and paste job. And some outrageous allegations that any person with common sense would not put such kind of bogus reports that clearly started with some anti-Eritrea elements, but she took them wholesale and tried to peddle them, to sell them to the Human Rights Council in Geneva. So as far as we are concerned, she was basically already determined to paint Eritrea in a negative image. In 2013, the resolution that was given to the Human Rights Council, if you examine the forensics of the document itself, shows that it was penned by Amnesty International or someone working for Amnesty International, because you could look at who authored the document, whose computer was used, and it was quite amazing and shocking to find out that Amnesty International wrote the resolution that condemned Eritrea. Even this commission of inquiry, you would see that when you look at the forensics of the document, it was prepared by someone who had worked or a template that was prepared for a Syrian commission of inquiry. So this kind of stuff, as Sophie was mentioning earlier on, Christian Solidarity Worldwide openly boasted, and it's in their website, that they started with a template. Their campaign first was to make Eritrea look like the North Korea of Africa. From that template, they say that they consulted everything they did for North Korea. So it was a well-orchestrated, pre-planned defamation, disinformation campaign with consultants with Ethiopia and other things. And the Commission of Inquiry admits that some of its sources are Ethiopian officials. Here are the patented liars, Ethiopian officials, who are determined to destroy Eritrea and its people, determined to occupy its territory. You take information that you got from the Ethiopian authorities and you peddle it as if it is reality or fact. This shows who she is partnering with, and rather than a neutral, impartial, and objective rapporteur or a member of a commission, she is, to my best knowledge, an activist that is bent to harm Eritrea rather than to help Eritrea.
Okay. Now the report is over actually 500 pages long, and my question is, why such a long-winded report, and what are its main contents? Ms. Sophia.
Well, it's very obvious. It would seem with this particular report that was produced that it's jam-packed with all kinds of allegations. Everything under the kitchen sink that you could get into a report, you get into this one. It was almost a report of desperation. And not so much the contents that were in there, because there was nothing new in there that we hadn't seen before. All the narratives on Eritrea and every single institution in Eritrea that they have been targeting for the last 15 years have been put into this report. What makes it sad, in a way, since it's supposed to be an inquiry commission and it's supposed to be a human rights seeking document, there's nothing that shows there was any fair procedure where both sides could be heard. It was completely one-sided. So it raises the issue of credibility with the report, not to mention the unsubstantiated allegations that make up the bulk of the report, and then the anonymous personalities that are quoted there, and the almost demeaning and contemptuous words that are used to describe Eritreans. At one point, they talk about prisoners and the way prisoners are treated, the way women are treated in Eritrea. They question the history of Eritrea. They butcher the history of Eritrea and the history of the Eritrean People's Liberation Movement. It's almost as if they didn't want the EPLF to be any part of Eritrean history. They undermine the works that Eritrean children are doing to develop their country. They undermine the Millennium Development Goals and what has achieved in Eritrea and what has been achieved by Eritrea. They undermine Eritrea's education system. If you remember, when Resolution 2023 was being passed at the United Nations and Gabon was drafting the resolution, there was an 8-9 page resolution before it was watered down and brought down to a couple of pages. But in there, the Ethiopians had managed to put everything exactly the way the Commission has in this report, to pretty much take out the government of Eritrea, because in that report, it was during the Al-Shabaab extravaganza that they decided to put every single institution of government to be sanctioned by the United Nations. And this report does exactly that. This report also calls for the entire government of Eritrea to be removed for them and to be, I guess, replaced by these nondescript personalities that supposedly know more about us and what Eritreans would need and what Eritrea, what the dreams and aspirations of the Eritrean people are. So this report, 500 pages, is everybody's wish list in the anti-Eritrea camp, as well as the international community that's financing these groups, because these groups are not doing it on their own, and the financing is coming from states that are interested in destabilizing Eritrea, states that are interested in regime change in Eritrea. So it has all the roadmaps of a regime change kind of report, and none of it can be verified by anybody because all the evidence is confidential. All the personalities that are quoted cannot be brought, and nobody can repeat this inquiry and get the same report. So overall, the 500 report was meant to confuse, because nobody's going to take time to read 500 pages. And since they just wanted the documents to be there, they wanted on the record. That's what it seems like they were doing, more than contemplating that it would amount to anything. So in the face of it, for Eritreans, it amounted to nothing. And nothing but a collection of hearsay, gossip, innuendos, complaints, individual and groups of the last 15 years. This was not a report of an inquiry commission befitting the UN, least of all the UN Human Rights Council. So the 500 pages is meant to bore you and just accept what the media tells you about the report. But if you went line by single page of this monstrous document,